I would like to thank my noble friend, Lord Naseby, for this timely debate regarding Sri Lanka and resolutions 30/1 and 34/1. My lords, I visited Sri Lanka on 3 occasions. I've traveled to various parts of the country and met with Sri Lanka's leadership and other senior figures. My travels to and around Sri Lanka also allowed me to see firsthand the situation on the ground. My lord, Sri Lanka suffered a 26-year-long civil war, which produced a great deal of suffering. The conflict ended 10 years ago, and Sri Lankans are well on their way to reconcile, rebuild, and reform. During my visit to Sri Lanka, I visited northern and eastern provinces, where some of the land was occupied by the security services. The Tamil politicians were against the government. My lords, I visited many farm camps for displaced Tamils. Whilst much of the propaganda at that time was that they were confined to the camps, I observed at that time that the displaced persons could come in and go out as they wished to. And in fact, I did speak to some of these persons. It's important that displaced persons should be settled and rehabilitated. During my discussion with various Sri Lankans, I was also made aware that there is a great deal of concern about the missing persons. My lords, I went to Kilnochi, where the demining was being undertaken by Halo Trust, and I noted that it was indeed a very slow process. In Jaffna, I talked to ex-combatants who were being trained by the government to obtain skills. Even today, I closely follow developments in Sri Lanka and cannot help noting the tremendous progress the country has made to tackle burning issues, especially over the last 3 years. Let me outline some of the key achievements of the country since then, as the UK has now become the main sponsor of the resolutions, which makes it imperative for us to take stock of the developments. The Sri Lankan government has now declared that it will be free of landmines by 2020, and Sri Lanka is part of the Landmine Ban Convention signed in Ottawa in September 1997, which was supported by the UK as well. Over 880,000 displaced persons have been settled since the end of the conflict in 2009. Sri Lankan security forces have returned 90% of state and private land which they have been occupying, and the remaining figure is less than 10%. Over 12,000 ex-combatants, including around 600 child soldiers, have been rehabilitated and reintegrated into society, with some pursuing higher studies or other vocations. As I said earlier, I had spoken to some of the ex-combatants. Sri Lanka has now taken ownership of mechanism created under the 4 pillars of transitional justice: truth, reconciliation, accountability, and guarantees of non-recurrence. This includes the Office of Missing Person, which is set up and is now functioning well. It is due to open 12 regional offices. Sri Lanka has also ratified the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances, and incidentally, the country is now party to all 9 core United Nations human rights instruments. Another mechanism of transitional justice is the Office Office of Reparation, established and passed in Parliament on 20th October 2018. Today, the commissioners are in the course of being appointed. The draft framework for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission has been submitted to the Cabinet Minister by the Prime Minister. An area for reform which had national and international attention is the review and repeal of Prevention Terrorism Act. This will be replaced by the Counter-Terrorism Act, which is in line with human rights standards. A bill was presented in Parliament last year, after which it was challenged by some parties in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the country has proposed some amendments which are now being considered at the committee stage in the Parliament. The government has also become party to the optional protocol to the UN Convention Against Torture, which also shows that it is taking allegation of torture very seriously and remains committed to investigation to be carried out and perpetrators prosecuted. Sri Lanka has also retained a moratorium on the death penalty since 1976, and I very much appreciate this action, as I'm totally against the use of death penalty. There are some steps which Sri Lanka has undertaken to engage fully with UN conventions on human rights. Sri Lanka respects the UN systems and processes and has transparent processes and legislation regarding human rights and welcomes UN investigation into their compliance. Furthermore, there is a reconciliation between political parties where moderate Tamil parties play a significant role in democracy and government. As I mentioned earlier, the Tamil politicians were previously totally against the government. I may also add that during the recent constitutional problems, the Tamil National Alliance played a key role and supported the democratic institutions in the country. I feel it's fair to say that after 10 years of conflict, Sri Lanka is now graduating to an upper middle income status. It is recipients of the GSP plus tariff concessions of the European Union, which is based on adherence to core United Nations conventions on human rights, labor rights, and the environment. Lonely Planet has termed Sri Lanka the best destination to visit for 2019, and I hope to visit the country as soon as I can. With the upcoming of the port city on its western coast, it is fast becoming a hub in the Indian Ocean. It will bring more trade to the country and bring wealth and prosperity to all Sri Lankans. My Lords, last October, I had the pleasure of receiving a personal briefing on Sri Lankan's development plans from the Minister in charge, Mr. Ranawaka. I would now like to say that I have developed a good relationship with the Sri Lankan High Commission here in London, and I'd like to make a personal comment on Sri Lanka's spirit for reconciliation between the communities. Throughout the year, the High Commission holds different functions to celebrate religious holidays. My Lords, last year attended and spoke at the Christmas celebration held at the High Commission. Even though Christians are a minority in Sri Lanka, who make up 8% of the population, Christmas is celebrated in the country and in fact in London. It was significant when I went to the function in Sri Lanka High Commission that the diaspora did attend. It was a good example of promoting reconciliation with the Sinhalese and Tamil chaplains of the Catholic Church in attendance. Finally, I would like to ask my noble friend the Minister as to whether the government appreciates the important progress Sri Lanka has made. What is being done to help Sri Lanka, and what more can be done? I would also like to ask whether there is any point for the resolutions to be continued. Can there be now a closure?
My Lords, the noble Lord Naseby has a long record of